So a very warm welcome to this year's Economic Times HR World Annual Event. As you're all aware, this year's event theme is around human capital experience. Our esteemed panel today would be discussing, in terms of the sub-theme, adapting to contemporary recruitment processes such as, SaaS platforms, ATSs, different enterprise tools, as well as the role of data sciences, AI, ML, etc. So folks, we've got a great panel here. Super excited once again. Thank them enough to be on the panel. Finally, just a quick word on myself. I'm Saurabh, Tandon, Chief Operating Officer of BetterPlace. We are India's largest technology platform for blue-collar workforce. So if there are enterprises that work with a lot of blue-collar workforce, which a lot of firms do, we basically offer solutions, again, across the entire life cycle, from hiring to engagement to managing this kind of workforce. Just with the introductions out of the way, I would love to get this thing going. I would start with you, Padmaja ji. At PwC, you're at the forefront of evolving themes and trends. And you obviously do consulting for myriad of customers, different industries. Given the theme is around technology, I think we've all seen a steady integration of technology into the overall people hiring and engagement processes. What I would love to hear from you is, how has the role of the HR professional changed as we look at this interplay between tools, platforms, and the fact that, at the end of the day, we're still talking about humans and, people centricity is still so paramount in the hiring process.
Thanks, Saurabh. Pleasure to be here and interact with everyone. Be great to be part of this event. So, interesting point that you raised. At the end of the day, if I just look back, right, from a recruitment perspective, I think technology helps tremendously. There's just no doubt about it. So whether it is, if I start with, let's say, intelligent sourcing, right? For example, on a typical career website, you would expect tens of thousands of resumes to be there. You have a certain number of open positions. How do you do intelligent sourcing to get that mapping going? Whether it's about driving candidate experience, for example, not having to put the same data in multiple places, right? Your candidate portal, somewhere else. If they actually do join you, do they have to repeat the whole thing again? So, and simply in terms of driving experience, just whether it's in terms of prompts for the hiring manager connects, there's so much that technology can do. But I think it also just strengthens the whole learning that at the end of the day, in a people business, it's always about technology and that personal experience, right? I think it just reiterates that. So technology makes a huge difference, but I think the role of the professional is actually very, very strong. It is really key there. Having said that, if I look back over the last 6-7 months, I think technology has helped all of us do so many things, right? Whether it's virtual interviewing, virtual onboarding. I mean, thought that was possible, right? That you can onboard thousands of people without their coming into your office. So it's been a huge enabler, but it's also posed the other side, that how do you make your new joinees really feel integrated? How do you help them feel that they're part of the new organization, sense the culture? So I think there's a lot that the role of the HR professional, the role of the recruiter requires in these times to find the right balance between these, right? Leverage technology, but make sure that you're giving people experience to the people that you onboard.
Super helpful. Now, I want to bring Namrata ji in. I wanted to get your perspective on how platforms and tools are enabling the employee engagement aspect post the hiring process. So I think we all understand the role of ATS and different tools, but especially as Padma ji alluded to, in COVID times, it becomes even more imperative. How do you you can onboard and get the documentation done, but how do you make the employees, if I can use the word, digitally integrate into the culture of the company? Would love to get your perspective on that.
Yeah, so I like to start with 3 points. The first one is, we are in the age of mass customization. No, it's the same solution. Everybody wants customization. If Facebook or Instagram is customizing my page, why are you not doing it for me? So I think we grew up in an era where we started with SAP, then SAP and other people had competitions. Now there are million solutions to one thing. In fact, the choice of a good vendor and integration of the vendor becomes super important. It's more important than ever that you want to do. Employee experience is the key. The second factor, which we think needs to be digitally enabled better, is employee happiness. And that is closely integrated with the employee experience. I think employee experience has 3 to 4 touch points, but the most important touch point is each communication that is digitally enabled has to be two-way communication. One-way communication digitally doesn't work.
Sure.
Reactions. And I'll 2 examples from my organizations. What we're doing. We are doing thematic pulse surveys. That means every day on my computer intrusively pops up something, and it's very thematic. For example, do you feel safe enough to come back to work? Was your transport safe enough? Starting with those things, so that you don't have everything needs to be so much in real time today.
Sure.
With this epidemic, it has become more important to do it. So that's the second point. The third point is, gone are the days when IT department was deciding the tool. User is at the heart now. It is not about functionality of the tool, it is more about the experience the user has with the tool. And the user experience actually drives the employee experience process, whether it's performance, whether it's engagement service, whether it's a learning tool. Everything is centered around how user experiences it. And I think in that aspect, design thinking has become very important. The second concept which we are bringing in today is platform thinking. Platform thinking is the simplest example is Airbnb, right?
Sure.
The platform where users and suppliers come together. In HR, can you have a platform where all companies come together and the suppliers come together and you have an integrated platform? So that is what we are talking about.
No, super helpful. But there's no panel discussion in today's time that cannot look to address the impact of COVID on organizations, especially around their HR processes, right? I would like to bring in Rajendra ji to share his perspective on how organizations have had to fast track their adoption of technology tools and processes in these times, especially obviously along the white collar spectrum, but in the conversations we were having yesterday, sir, you talked some very interesting things about how some of these adoptions are also hitting the factory floors. So I would love to get that perspective a little bit in terms of how things have been fast tracked across organizations.
So thank you, Saurabh, for having me here. It's good to have conversation amongst us. At Welspun, I believe we have seen a decent spike in the business that we were able to get, and we have had a decent staged up in terms of our e-commerce business coming by.
Sure.
Now, the kind of clients and the business partners that we deal with, they are Walmarts of the world, JCPenney's, and large retail clients. And the best part is that 90% of our business is overseas and 10% is India. Now, to visibility across this value chain, we pushed harder with respect to ensuring that our digital integration across all value chains of the organization, whether it's supply chain, internal enterprise, and also connecting with the end mile customer so that they have a visibility of where we are. So today, fortunately, where we are currently, Walmarts and other clients that we work with, they actually work with our platforms so that they have clear accessibility of the inventory levels and the governance structures that we have to follow. So all of that is currently being done in a very seamless manner. We're also trying to ensure that there's one truth of data that is available, and therefore Industry 4.0 is hugely in the process of implementation, and which basically means that we'll connect all the machineries, build interconnectedness amongst the machineries, and generate enough and more data for us to really work on the decisioning part. So that piece is happening. On the e-commerce technology, that's the other area that we are working on. So we, at the end of this phase, which is the March that we have, we are targeting, also ensure that our variable pay plan that we have rolled out, our variable pay plan is basically ensuring that there are 3 triggers that we have created. One is that there'll be no Excel working that will happen. And therefore, we have to move towards, even business reviews have to happen on dashboards, BI, and therefore those kinds of implementation.
Sure.
Other thing is that, a variable pay plan, we are saying that the first trigger is the achievement of our digital milestones that we've created quarter on quarter. And
Sure.
we have also hired one of the top, big fours to ensure that there is external evaluation of whether what we have targeted for ourselves, are we on that track or no? So therefore that's the first trigger, and then comes the revenue, and then comes the EBITDAs and rest of the other KPIs of the business. But the first KPI is that you have to deliver on the implementation and adoption of digital journey, and which basically means Athena. There are multiple projects that we are currently running, and that's something that we are integrating.
So super helpful, sir. I think just if I can add a quick question, and this pertains a little bit to what we do at BetterPlace. I found it very interesting where you talked about the translation of machine logs, as you put it, to measure employee productivity. One of the challenges we typically see, especially in the blue collar space, is interpretation of what all of these things mean eventually to, kitna salary milega at the end of the month, right? Yeah. So maybe if you can spend a minute and just talk a little bit about that whole translation piece, so that people also buy into these evolving, hey, there's going to be data driving more of these.
Yeah. So the real reason why we got into this exercise was to ensure that our people earn more. What happens is when people come on board, they are at a salary which is largely about in the range of about 10,000.
Sure.
But 500 rupees matters a lot.
Absolutely.
And then they try and look out, and they sometimes move on to some other opportunities. What we are saying is that if you are in yellow and you deliver a green level efficiency, we give you a value which is more than the competition can give you in terms of hiring. What we're looking at is connecting the efficiencies and deliveries of individuals and helping them earn more, so that they don't have to look beyond the organization. And the other objective is, for an 8-hour shift, if somebody delivers X value and he takes another incremental delivery, he takes another 4 hours, we end up actually getting into the whole overtime scenarios.
Absolutely.
Consume electricity and other utilities. It's but so we are saying that let's share what are through efficiency that you deliver, we share the values that we save, and you look beyond the organization. So that's the process we are in currently.
Sure, no, super helpful. I mean,
and we don't want any logs to be manually interpreted. So therefore, it is completely we are going on automated zone.
You might actually have solved one of the key challenges that we see in the blue collar industry, which is minimum wages tend to become maximum wages at a certain point.
That's true.
Very fascinating, sir. I think
would
love to pick your brain a little bit.
Happy to share that anytime. Sure.
So super helpful. I just want to kind of pull Namrata, you back into the conversation. Just the whole COVID impact. Obviously, you're operating in the pharma space. A lot of folks are looking at firms such as yours. Give us that vaccine, or once the vaccine comes through, help us. We're a vast country, huge amount of distribution. So obviously a lot of those things are business metrics, but just want to understand as one of the firms at the forefront to enable India's fight against COVID. I guess how challenging has it been in the past 6 months to scale talent, right? Whether it's across R&D, your distribution hubs, supply chains, etc., in preparation for the fact that eventually the whole country will need this vaccine, and there's obviously a huge business opportunity as well.
So I'd like to start with an incident that when COVID struck, right? And I remember when we had to say, okay, we had to get the essential services certification and we can't be shut even for a day. So even today I'm in office and I don't remember having missed office. In fact, we think leaves, which is another matter, because there wasn't any time to do that. So I think one of the things my CEO told me is life gives you lemon and you make lemonades. So every crisis should be utilized for an opportunity. And he was extremely inspiring, extremely. So while we used a lot of digital tools, we onboarded something like 1,500 people in this lockdown period. And I would have onboarded around, if I were to talk of very, very senior leadership team level people, around 50 more people onboarded, and which is extremely senior people. And we allowed people to join remotely, which was not a problem, but we also ensured through government that everybody comes on board here, lands in Hyderabad or Vizag or Baddi. Um, like Rajendra was saying, 90% of our revenue, in fact, a lot of our revenue is from US, Russia, and emerging markets. So very little comes out of India. Again, Brazil, Russia, these were the countries that was a lot of COVID. I think for us, the main thing was supply chain, making sure the medicines are reaching the patients, whether we were making remdesivir, whether we were making Avigan. Even today, I was sitting with my leader who was ensuring that the vaccine truck goes to the drug testing laboratory in time. So I think in there, done that. I think digital enabled. One of the things we thought was very important is create more listening tools. I think listening to employees was extremely important rather than telling them. And I think the digital adoption is all-time high, right? And it has been all-time high. But as we said, those models changed, whether it was going to the doctors in India, right, where the patient goes, or approaching Walgreens in the US, or working in Latin America, or Italy, getting the medicines across in Italy while Corona was there, and how to across the shipment where people walk to get the trucks. I think they've been great employee experience stories and communicating those across to motivate others. So I would think the motivation and engagement is all-time high. Our problem was slightly different. We had, if you call it an omni workforce, the people who had to be at work and the people who didn't have to be at work. How do you differentiate? How do you tell in the same desk one person to come to work? And how to deal with that? And that's where we leverage the power of digital to engage and to capture the. I think for me, it was about storytelling, listening to the stories, how people have been coming to work, how people who were working from home didn't feel guilty, or to integrate more digital technologies just in time, yet making a right choice for employee experience. So all these burdens were very, very difficult. But I think as an HR department, as people department, we have made all the lemonade we could from the lemon that the pandemic gave us. I think it was a great opportunity here that we leveraged.
Sure. And I think we can all, thanks firms such as yours. I'm sure anyone who's in supply chain can relate to a lot of the aspects that you spoke about. Thanks, Namrata. Shifting gears a little bit, in today's world, we've got these social platforms, right? We're all exposed. We're probably all on some of these platforms. Now, these platforms are generating maybe 10x, 100x more data about talent, right? LinkedIn obviously comes across as, probably the hub or one of the key platforms where, it's all kind of data-driven decision-making. A lot of this data is also very unstructured. If you compare it to the traditional, structured relational way of storing data, very unstructured data, largely text data, right? Compared to traditional HCM platforms. I was very intrigued. I was chatting with Harjeet ji leading up to this conversation. I was very intrigued in terms of some of the work that they've been doing, and would love for him to share his perspectives, specifically on how, whether it's artificial intelligence, everyone's talking artificial intelligence, machine learning, etc. But it's fascinating to know how AI and ML is being leveraged by organizations, whether it's more effective talent hunt, talent engagement, which, I think has become as important today as attracting the right talent. I would love to get Harjeet ji from you some of the perspectives on what are typically the challenges that we see dealing with social data, and then as you go through some of those challenges, how do you kind of spin out eventually insights and scalable solutions which organizations can apply for managing their human capital?
There are certain things I believe all the panelists talked about, but there are certain things which I would like to talk about what changed in especially talent acquisition space because of COVID. One is this concept of work from home which came in, and not only work from home, we moved a step further where we said, okay, work from hometown is also okay. The concepts which we used to hear earlier, those concepts have started coming into reality. If you see right now also, there was a Gartner report which said that 41% jump is there. In fact, 41% people were working from home. And as of now, this was April report. As of now, around 53% people are either working remotely or are working from, say, are commuting from the same cities. That was one thing which changed. Another thing I will narrate in terms of a story. So I have a friend, his name is Prasad. Prasad was very worried during the COVID, and he was saying, I am not going to get my pension because all the senior people, he's around 70. So all the senior people have to go to pension office and say that I am alive so that they can get pension. So he said, I will not be able to do that. He said, let's talk to pension office. We called pension office. So he said, I can verify, you don't have to worry. I can verify you on WhatsApp call. So he verified on WhatsApp call. I thought Prasad will be happy. Prasad was furious. He said, if you can do that on WhatsApp call, then for past 7 years, why you made me travel all the way? Same thing is happening in our space also. Look, all these tools, e-tools we are talking about, they are available for quite some time. Candidates are asking, when all these things were available, why you guys were not using them?
Sure.
So that adoption is another piece. That most of the times we think that technology is something which we will have to buy and implement. Many times we don't realize that technology, the piece of technology we are looking at, is actually available in talent acquisition space also. You might be thinking that I want a platform, but it is not necessary to get a platform. Many a times all those things are available in parts and bits and pieces in the environment itself. You just have to pick. They are not stitched together. So coming on to the social data, as of now, you ask any candidate to come to your site and create a profile. People try to avoid it. They will create a LinkedIn profile and maybe a Naukri profile. They will not go and create profile on each and every website. So as an employer, if you're looking at that data to come to you, you will have to think of innovative ways. So there are a lot many applications of the new gen tools which are coming in, and it is up to us that how we leverage those tools, how uh, we have a responsibility of taking the recruitment or taking the HR to the next level. And that will happen when, look, in HR, we deal with unstructured things. And that is why we were never considered a science. Point is, machine learning is right now doing just that. And it is saying unstructured is also science, and it is more complex science. And that is what HR is, a more complex science. And we have that strong connection with the machine learning thing we are talking about. So there are many usage, unlimited possibilities. I will stop there.
I think super helpful. I love the tagline. HR is a complex science, and I was thinking, yes, of course it is. I mean, it deals with humans after all, who are complex beings. Super interesting perspectives, Harjeet ji. I want to pull you in, Padmaja, into this conversation from the perspective of from where you folks sit. You guys have great insights into what trends you're seeing across the marketplace, right? I think a couple of things which Harjeet ji brought up. I would love to get your view, maybe a little bit more macro level. One is, are we seeing adoption of, hey, let's look at social, data as one of the key ingredients and see how we can integrate and use that into our hiring process. That's number one. Would love to get your view. There certain industries doing it better than others. There are certain industries which think it's more valuable for them. Maybe there are certain domains where it's more valuable, certain job functions, etc. I think that would be super helpful. And secondly, the whole perspective, right, around overall applicability of like Harjeet ji mentioned, platforms have been around for a long period of time. I totally agree. And of course, we expect a little bit better adoption of these platforms given COVID. But are we starting to see interplays where folks are saying, hey, I'm looking for more specialized solutions versus maybe cookie cutter kind of HCM solutions, which work for very large organizations. might not work, so much for organizations which are, maybe 100, 200, 500,000 employees. So a couple of questions, but, would love to get your perspectives on that.
Yeah, sure, Saurabh. So since you spoke about macro perspective, and since we're discussing so much about, COVID times, I thought I would share one or two macro perspectives before actually coming into your question.
Sure.
So I think we've all talked a lot about, what's changed, right? It's been 7 months now. And just the impact on workforce has actually been very interesting to see. Again, going back to this whole point of, mass customization, what's been happening, right? So just to link up what everybody's spoken of, I mean, how have we all coped with it, right? How have all our organizations coped with it? On one hand, I think data is showing us across the board that in some places productivity is actually increasing, right? In fact, I know the technology sector, people have spoken about how, if you just take some measure of productivity, right? So many lines of, I'm just giving example, maybe lines of code or however you measure productivity, it's actually gone up by a significant factor. I'm talking of more than 2 or 3, right? So there are some examples of places like that. At the same time, what is really suffering, right? So one approach is to say that, hey, look, we can continue this way for a long time. And in many cases, I'm sure we can. Then the question becomes, what is really suffering? And I think data is also showing that the manner in which different people are, their productivity is being driven in this period of time is actually very, very dispersed, very diverse. So you have the average actually hides that, right? So you have some who are super productive, you have some where productivity is actually dropped, right? Yeah. What is really suffering? It's that whole piece of, wherever you need to have collaborative working, wherever you need to have just a whole bit on culture, right? Feeling that whole social identity, feeling part of something. So I think it's going to be very interesting from a macro perspective, again, across industries to see how, when this is not there, just picking on what Harjeet said, all of us always spoke about work from home. All of us always spoke about flexibility. Maybe there were doubts on whether it will work. But it's really going to be interesting to see how new operating models are going to come out, right? And I think some industries will adopt to this much better than others. Of course, in some cases, it's not possible. For example, Namrata spoke about how it's important to be at work. For us, very often, for example, when, let's say, there's physical stock taking happening as a part of an audit, I mean, you just have to physically be there. So it depends on the need and the operating model. But I think we're going to have a lot of hybrid models emerge, and that's going to be interesting to see. To your point on customization, cookie cutter, see, I feel, I mean, this whole space of recruitment, there are just so many nuances around it, right? There's the whole bit of the mass hiring, where you say that you're hiring for a certain kind of skill at volume, where you can really apply a lot of this science, a lot of these tools, right? I think from our perspective, for example, we hire so many heterogeneous skills. If you look at it, we're across so many different domains. We hire so many heterogeneous skills. So we would take very different approaches for different ones. Where you hire at scale, you want to look at, an RPO kind of a model. You want to look at partnering, in that space and drive it for scale. But when it comes to niche requirements or even, hiring at senior levels, right, we would want to take very, very different models. And I think that's where the role of many outsourced partners is also evolving, right? I think the different kinds of partnership models evolving, and I would love to see more of that, because I think most of us we're not in the business of recruitment, right? We don't need to build all of that capacity in-house, and I would love to partner with the best in the space for different needs.
Sure. So helpful. Almost running kind of out of time. I wanted to definitely pose one last question. Would love to get kind of a quick couple of lines from each one of the panelists. A lot of you come and represent what we would classify the traditional brick and mortar space, right? And of course, Padmaja, you see a lot of your clientele are probably in this space. We've seen the whole startup ecosystem in India over the last 5-6 years, the Olas, the Flipkarts of the world, right? One of the key pain points which we hear, and we definitely face it at BetterPlace, is when it comes to technology, product, and very specialized hiring, right? There's a lot of challenges, due to paucity of talent, compensation levels which seem to be a little bit all over the place, and just given the competitive landscape. I just wanted to get a sense, how are firms such as yourselves, firms you represent, trying to use a little bit more technology to also see how they can differentiate themselves as a brand and look to stand out. A, obviously in these challenging times. B, talent always is difficult in certain areas, especially product tech. And C, you're competing today, with this whole startup ecosystem, which didn't exist, frankly, 6 years back. So love to get, quick snippets on that.
So I'd like to go first, maybe.
Yeah.
That's okay. So I think we hire a lot of startups and we lose a lot of talent to startups.
Sure.
Things happen, and the directory of angel list and everything which you used to hire, it's the same. It's like our LinkedIn to hire most of the digital place. Yeah. I think two things that we did differently is we looked at why people are there. So creating organizations within organizations.
Sure.
Like a Hotstar and Disney and Star, right? There were multiple organizations within an organization.
Yeah.
I think we looked at that model and we learned to seed some of the fundings internally. So why seed some of the intrapreneurs internally? So why go external? So that is one way to look at it. Second way to look at it is to structure your compensation very efficiently. People like to be challenged. People like to be driven, right?
Yeah.
And people like to create wealth sooner. So what kind of compensation structures that you can give them and use your compensation effectively?
Sure.
Third is empowerment and autonomy. Go more for self-managed teams. The traditional hierarchical model may not work anymore. So autonomy is autonomy. And the last one being creating expertise. Sure. I think people join startup because they're niche, because they're experts. There's nobody better than them. And creating that niche, tolerating mavericks.
Super helpful. Rajendra ji, I mean, some perspectives from textile, someone would say is probably one of the more traditional industries, right? So, whether it's tech, product, more specialized roles, what are some of the challenges that you've seen?
So I think, on the adoption side, we are the front runners on adoption of technology across all the value chain, whether in the supply chain, etc.
Sure.
But, I think, fortunately for us, and why only us, for the rest of the industry as well, COVID has come and it has really, changed the way we actually work. So while, like others have spoken about that, tools remained in the system. The utilization or adoption wasn't there at all.
Yeah.
So I think it was largely because of the comfort of working with the tools that you were already doing so. I thought of taking advantage of other tools which probably could have made life easier. So that push had to come, and I think COVID has actually given that push. So kind of in industrial revolution itself, towards fourth revolution certainly has come about.
Sure.
We are. I think if you look at whether we consider ourselves to be a textile company or a product company or FMCG, probably we are in that. We don't want to classify ourselves in the textile domain itself, because the kind of consumer interface and the kind of things that we do is far superior in terms of design, aesthetics, the way we serve. So we don't want to be considered in that scenario. On the adoption of technology, I think we have a long way to go. And I believe tools like AI and ML do impact a lot, at least on the hiring space a lot.
Couldn't agree more. Harjeet ji, few final words. I mean, you kind of sit in a very interesting space, data. Some would classify the world's largest startup. So, yet a very traditional brick and mortar conglomerate, right? So very interesting. Again, just to repeat that question, how do you kind of see brand play a central role, especially for organizations which are probably also looking to transform themselves from a brand perspective in terms of talent attraction?
I believe all the panelists have given the answer, so I will try to put my perspective in. Whenever we talk about brand, basically it is you want to look good in front of the candidates, in front of the potential employees. So one way of looking good is that you apply makeup. And most of the people go for that because that is easier to do. Or you do yoga, eat properly, sleep properly, then also your skin will glow And maybe that will be a better outcome for a long-term engagement. I will give you an example. One of my friends in retail, so he thought that a lot is happening and everything is being put on technology. So he had put a test, a intelligent test, and based on that test, he hired people for stacking in the retail store. Out of the people he hired, he had to sack 70% people because they were not able to stand and stack on the floor. So he said, what am I doing? Why am I testing these people on intelligence or how to stack? I will ask them to stack, and whosoever is able to stack, I will give that employment to that person. Now, this is simple philosophy. If you see, most of the companies are moving in this direction. You see emergence of GitHub. They're saying no more interviews. You put your work on GitHub. We will see if your work is strong enough. Now, you might be thinking this is happening only in technology space. Of course, it is happening in technology space, but in design also, Behance is there. So these kind of platforms and new way of this entire piece of hackathon, this is basically changing the structure of how we are going to recruit in future. It is not going to be the same manner. When technology comes in, business models change. And that is what we should wait for. If we are doing well in business, brand will get built automatically. So you think of business, make sure your business is doing well and you are treating your employees fairly. Rest everything happens on its own.
So great message. I mean, having your employees as brand ambassadors at some level. Folks, look, I think we can do this for hours. There's fascinating conversations, fascinating perspectives that you all bring in. I wasn't joking when I said you've got a century of experience in this space across all of you. So I really, really appreciate, I think we tried to explore a lot of different things. We probably will not do justice because we can't go deep in short conversations such as this, but I really appreciate the different perspectives you all could bring in on, myriad of different topics, from hiring, acceleration of, technology with COVID, etc. If I have to summarize, I would say it was, I look at, kind of some things which would stick with me, right? And I'm going to use this in some of my conversations, with my own employees, customers, etc. I love the fact, Padma set this set the stage early enough where she talked about, yes, tools, technology, all of that stuff. But it's a people-centric process, and that will always stay important, right? So, you figure out how your tools will work, but strike the right balance. I couldn't agree more with what Namrata put up earlier, where she talked about, when you talk about employee engagement, you literally have to define it, from a customization at a user perspective level. Obviously, large platforms do that, and they build world-class, platforms and business models around that. But to think about how you can bring that to every single employee, where you feel like, hey, whether it's engagement, the processes, etc., they're customized to me as an individual user. I think just conceptually is a fascinating topic, right? And I'm pretty sure a lot of work is going to happen in that piece. It was so nice of Rajendra ji to talk about, again, this is something which is close to our heart at BetterPlace, where he talked about, appraisal management is now happening via platforms. That's a pretty big shift because it tends to be a people-centric process. And this whole idea around linking machine logs to employee productivity, one of the big challenges which hundreds of millions of Indians classified as blue collar face is, there's no clear path on how are you going to earn more, right? So if you're able to link some level of data, which they might not understand, to their own productivity levels, there's a clear differentiation. There are guys who really want to earn more, and here's a very clear path. And, rest assured, sir, I'm going to make that to NSDC, because they have been kind of trying to solve that problem in that space.
Happy to do that.
And of course, I think Harjeet ji has mixed some very deep concepts with a bit of nice humor. I really appreciate that. I think totally agree. We're all data guys. Before BetterPlace, I was at Mu Sigma, so I can relate to a lot of the things you folks you've talked about. And I think, look, the data is out there. It depends on how you want to harness it. Tools will be out there. I think eventually it comes down to be, business is business. You still want to define it. I love how you ended it, where you said, end of the day, if you want to differentiate as a brand, create brand ambassadors out of your employees. I think, no better way to do that. So look, guys, I really appreciate the time. I think this was super helpful. I learned a lot. I'm not from the HR fraternity, so this was great. We're trying to scale our own business out, and we know a lot of these things are going to be super important, as we try to bring talent in. I want to thank each one of you personally for spending the time. I know you're all super busy, so thanks so much for carving this out on a weekday. And finally, thanks to Economic Times HR World for giving us this opportunity. Thanks so much. We'll stay in touch. Really appreciate it.